All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amelia Curtis, and I am the Education and Training Manager at San Diego Humane Society. You are joining us today for our Pet Talk, Stop Reacting and Start Connecting, understanding what you and your dog need in tough moments. And we are fortunate today to have Ashley Cipoletti, founder of Co-Regulated Canines, here today to present to you all. And she's going to walk us through a little bit of an interactive presentation. So we're really thankful for that. So some housekeeping before she gets started. Feel free if you have a question to save it for the end, please. If it's something that you need clarification on, maybe about a slide, feel free, you can pop that in the chat and I can ask Ashley to answer for you, but questions can be saved to the end. If she does have an interactive component where she's asking you to share and converse a little bit about a topic, feel free to either use the chat or you can unmute yourself. So whichever one you would like to do. And then we also have Lily here today, who is representing our behavior and training team from San Diego Humane Society. So thank you so much, Lily, for also being here. If anyone has any questions specific to programming that we have at San Diego Humane Society, or if how any of this applies to the work that we do as well, feel free to let Lily know and she can answer those questions also. So without further ado, I will hand it off to our wonderful presenter, Ashley.
Thank you, and happy to be here. So yeah, today we're going to talk about how we can stop reacting and start connecting more with our dogs through understanding what you and your dog need in tough moments. Because I feel like there's so much emphasis always on the dog, and sometimes it's helpful to give us some love and care too. And then a little bit more about me and who I am. I'm a multi-certified professional dog trainer, and I spent over 10 years working in human mental health as well. I actually used to do some animal sheltering work at the Kitsap Humane Society in Washington State. And I'm the owner and founder of Co-Regulated Canines here in San Diego, specializing in supporting reactive dogs and helping their humans feel calmer and more confident too. And before we dive into everything, I wanted to share my personal why this is so important to me. So I've spent most of my life being incredibly patient and kind with animals and people, I like to think, but there was a season where everything in my world felt really overwhelming. I was under so much stress with no ability to really see a way out. And at this point, my own health started to crumble. I was eventually diagnosed with endometriosis, and my body constantly felt inflamed, like it was like waving a big red flag that I couldn't ignore. I was in so much chronic pain and felt so unsafe in my home environment that I became more irritable, more fatigued, and started to show signs of even depression. I lost a ton of weight and found myself snapping in moments I otherwise wouldn't, and stressing my dogs out at home from fighting with my partner to the point where they started to have potty accidents in the house. Some days it was hard for me to get out of bed, and I'd even call friends and family, and they'd say they hardly recognized my voice and would say, "It sounds like your light is gone." So at the same time, when I was experiencing all this stress, I was also working in animal sheltering, an extremely stressful job for those of you that might not know, despite me loving it. And I started to see the effects of stress play out in a dog I grew to love deeply. It was kind of like this parallel process of what I was going through and what this dog was going through. And her name was Ruby Roo. She's in the photo on the bottom left here. And Ruby was my sidekick office dog. She was sweet, loyal, and snuggly to her trusted people. But over time, the constant stress of the shelter environment unfortunately took a toll on her. Her body started to break down. She got sick and just had these health issues pop up and aggressive outbursts that came up out of nowhere. We realized she wasn't okay, not physically and not emotionally either. Making the decision to let her go for the sake of her quality of life was the hardest thing I've arguably ever done. And in fact, it broke me down at a time where I already felt like I had nothing left. It's hard to put into words how much I loved this dog and how much that loss shaped me, but I will always carry a part of Ruby with me and the reason why I do this work. And it's to help prevent suffering and save the lives of other dogs in her memory, too. And that experience cracked something open in me. I saw so clearly how chronic stress impacts both humans and dogs, how it shifts our behavior, our physiology, and even our personalities. And I knew behavior change went far beyond rewards and consequences. I saw how deeply our relationship with our dogs can affect our well being too. So, ever since, I've been determined to help ease the weight of life's chronic stress for both ends of the leash so that no one has to suffer the way that Ruby and I once did. And while I know that was heavy, I promise the rest of this presentation won't be. And here's a glimpse of what we'll cover today. We'll get an insight into what really is contributing to your dog's behavior, actionable steps to ease unnecessary stressors, ideas on how to meet your own needs and your dog's unique needs, and learning how to navigate tough moments with your dog. And then lastly, the integration of co-regulation, and I'll explain what that means in your relationships. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end and some more resources. But a lot of these slides will be exercises for you to kind of just deep dive and really like look into your own life. So I recommend having a pen and paper or even just popping open your phone notes app or like writing a little sticky note on your computer, whatever device you're on and works for you. And then my invitation to you throughout this presentation is to remember that this isn't about being perfect or getting perfect behavior from our dogs. It's about creating a relationship built on curiosity, even in hard moments. Plus, a little sense of humor goes a long way. All right. And like, let's be real. If you look at a lot of these photos, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to when our dog just pushes all the wrong buttons. It can be incredibly frustrating when your dog does something that drives you up the wall and you have no idea why. It can feel scary when you worry your dog might actually bite someone or you. It can be the cherry on top of a terrible day when you come home from work to find your couch shredded, your trash everywhere, or a freshly chewed shoe. It can be embarrassing and painful to walk a dog that's barking, pulling, and lunging at every person or pup in sight, especially when people give you that look. And let's not forget the awkward horror of your dog deciding to hump a guest's leg, especially if that guest is a brand new boyfriend or girlfriend. That's always really uncomfortable. But if any of this feels familiar, just know you're not alone. Most of us have had moments where we felt overwhelmed, triggered, or even hopeless about our dog's behavior. And this presentation is here to explore those moments, not to shame or blame, but to offer a new way forward. And before we dive into all the dog stuff, let's talk about you and how stress actually works in your body. Because stress isn't just a bad mood or a busy schedule, it's a full body event. Your digestion slows down, your muscles tense, your heart races, your hormones shift, and even your immune system takes a hit. It can impact how you move, how you speak, and how you respond, especially to the ones closest to you. And anyone who's ever been in a relationship knows when your partner's stressed, they might not be their best self. And that stress can often ripple onto you. And it's like this domino effect, which happens with our dogs as well. And it's important to also note that not all stress is bad. There's something called acute stress, which is short bursts of it, like if you slam on the brakes to prep or prepping for like speaking in front of a group. That stress is your body doing its job. It's keeping you alert, sharp, and ready to act. But then there's chronic stress, and that's the stress that kind of lingers. So it's like if you're juggling work and finances, relationship conflict, and feeling like your dog's behavior is just one more thing you're not on top of. And that's the kind of stress that wears down your mind, body, and emotional bandwidth over time. And here's something wild. Your body doesn't always know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. It's like the feeling you get if you just think about having a hard conversation, your heart might start pounding or your stomach twists and knots, even over something that hasn't happened yet. That's your brain sending a danger signal and your body following right along. Because your perception shapes your experience. There's even science behind this. It's not just woo-woo talk. If your mind believes something's a threat, your body prepares to protect you, even if you're just sitting safely on your couch. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. how you interpret stress changes how your body responds to it. So if you see a challenge as growth, like this will help me become more confident, your body can shift into eustress, which is known to be a more positive kind of stress that fuels learning and resilience. But if you think, oh, I'm failing as a dog parent, or I can't get anything right, your body responds with distress. It moves into protection mode. And your nervous system will remember that and try to avoid similar situations in the future, even if it's not actually dangerous. So, even the good kind of stress can actually also take a toll if we never let ourselves rest and recover. That's why you can feel burned out even from doing things that you love. So here's the bottom line: whether it's physical, emotional, or imagined, your body treats stress like a real thing because to your nervous system, it is. And your dog's nervous system works the same way. All right. And so we're going to go into our first exercise before we move forward. I want to pause here for a quick but like powerful reflection. And I want you to take about like 4 minutes to jot down what your typical stressors are. This would be in your like daily or weekly life. They could be things like running late, feeling overwhelmed by work, managing your kid's school routine, your dog barking at joggers on every walk. Try to get really specific. The more detail, the more insight you'll gain in this exercise. And then after you've listed them, try to rank them from most stressful to least stressful. And this isn't about like perfection. It's like just a general idea. And we're not going to go into fixing anything yet. This is just about noticing. So we'll give you 4 minutes to start working on this. And yeah, and then we'll move on.
And I'll let you all know when there's about 2 minutes left.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes. All right, that's our 4 minutes.
Thank you. All right. So it's important to note with this list, this isn't about fixing anything yet. It's just about noticing. And the goal here is to start becoming more aware of the patterns that build up tension in your day, because once we see them clearly, we can actually do something about them instead of just staying stuck in a reactive mode. So you're not going to do anything with this list yet. Just keep it to the side. We will reflect on that later. All right. And then just like us, stress affects our dogs' bodies, minds, and behavior too. And if you know what to look for, you can actually see some of these physiological changes show up in their body language. So take a look at the two photos here. They're of the same dog, but in two very different states. The image on the left shows signs of stress and arousal, while the image on the right shows a more relaxed and regulated dog. And so I wanted to either open up the chat, or if anyone wants to pop off of mute really quick, can anyone spot the stress signals in the left photo and just let us know your observations? I see one comment that says ears are back in the left photo. Yep, that's correct. Any others?
What about the tongue sticking out like venting?
Yeah, and it's like this kind of tense, like spoon-like shape as compared to the one in the right that's looks more relaxed in the mouth. And I see eyes narrow in the chat. Yep, I call them sometimes like shark eyes. They'll have these really dilated pupils. And usually some dogs get really mouthy. That's why, hence the shark part of that comment. Any other signs that anyone notices? I was like, all right. Well, this next one I feel like is harder to see, but if you pay close attention to the muscles on the face, you can see that the photo on the left has a lot more tension in those muscles. So there's more wrinkles around the smile and around the forehead compared to the one on the right. So it's a subtle difference, but once you start to see it, you're like, oh, there's a lot of tension there in the face. All right. And if anyone has anything else, feel free to throw it in the chat, but we'll move on. And then we're going to, again, compare the left to the right. So on the right, there's softer facial muscles, a relaxed tongue, neutral ears, calmer, softer eyes. And if you notice your dog looking like the one in the left photo, chances are they're in what's called a high state of arousal. It's like the body's getting ready for action. And they're not usually likely to make their best decisions in that moment, or at least the best decisions we'd like them to make. It's kind of like trying to have a thoughtful conversation with your partner, like mid roller coaster ride. It's like the timing for these types of requests matter. And you're much more likely to have a better outcome of when you ask your dog to do commands or cues when they're calm, emotionally available, and regulated. And so if they look more like the dog on the right, you'll have much a higher response of them responding to known cues or commands. And a lot of people will just kind of keep shouting at dogs that look really, really over aroused, and they really struggle to be able to think and process what you're asking from them in that state. And again, so yeah, many people make the mistake of trying to teach their dog skills or what not to do when their dog is in a dysregulated state, which is similar again to trying to tell your partner what to do if they're in the middle of something really stressful. It typically is not going to go well, or they'll just tune you out. And it's tempting to shout a bunch of like no's or commands at our dogs when they're in this state, because usually when dogs are dysregulated, they act naughty. You might notice excessive vocalizing, fast, erratic movement, or freezing and shutting down, and they might not want to walk. They might chase the cat much more if they look like this, or squirrels on your walk. They might nip at things or nip at movement. They might jump, hump, or pace. And again, that inability to respond to commands or cues, whatever word that you tend to use. And we're going to go into these stress signs in a little bit more detail in the next slide, which is going to be a video that I will play for you guys. And you'll have to let me know what it's like, because it's being a little funky actually on my presenter. Let's see.
There are 10 very clear signs of stress in dogs that can alert us to the fact they need help. Find out how to detect them in this Animal-Wise video. Hyperactivity. It's very common for stressed dogs to enact hyperactive behaviour. They are incapable of being calm, often leading to chewing furniture or any object they find in their path to release the accumulated tension. Appearance of stereotypies. Stereotypies are constant repetitive movements carried out by the dog without a specific purpose. There are many types of stereotypies. We can observe dogs that bite their tails, chase invisible animals, bark non-stop, among many others. All are repetitive and incessant. Overreactions. Maybe your dog was already prone to barking, eating things off the ground, or reacting excitedly to other dogs. Whatever their previous habits, if you now observe their reactions are much more intense, it's usually a sign of stress. Salivation and licking. If we observe a dog licking their lips and salivating excessively, it's essential to pay attention to whether it is a habit they carry out repeatedly and constantly. It is a sign of stress in dogs that we must take into account. Inattention. Dogs that are stressed suffer from generalized nervousness that makes it difficult for them to concentrate, pay attention, or follow our obedience commands. If your dog shows a general lack of attention, you could always evaluate with your veterinarian whether it is an attention deficit problem. Excessive panting. Panting is used by dogs to expel heat from the body. If you see your dog panting in situations where they should be calm, they are probably stressed and need to relieve the tension they experience. Sometimes the panting can be accompanied by whining and sounds of sadness. Discover other causes of excessive panting in dogs in the video we share above. Reactivity or flight. Stressed dogs usually feel very uncomfortable in an unknown situation or one that is promoting stress. For example, if our dog suffers stress when meeting other dogs, each of these encounters will cause them to overreact. That will make them try to run away or react negatively to this stimulus. Hair loss. Hair loss usually occurs in cases of chronic stress in which the dog begins to feel physically affected by the situation they experience. If you notice your dog begins to lose hair due to anxiety, you should go to the vet as soon as possible. They can also lose hair from compulsive licking or pulling it out directly with their teeth. Act as soon as possible as the dog is sending you emergency signals. Muscle stiffness. Especially in situations that cause stress, we can see they are more tense and rigid than usual. It's common to observe tension in the tail and limbs when waiting for some significant event to occur. Next, we share a video in which we show you 5 ways to reduce stress in a dog. Changes in behavior. It's very common in dogs that suffer from stress to begin to develop behaviors they have never shown before, such as aggressiveness, shyness, depression, or phobias. Instead of displaying them in specific situations, they begin to do so in a generalized way. This is one of the most revealing signs of stress in dogs. If you think your dog is very stressed, we recommend you see an ethologist or dog educator as soon as possible. Both animal professionals will help and guide you with useful tips and guidelines specific to your case. They can also help you identify the root cause of your dog's stress. If you want to continue learning about behavioral problems in dogs, don't miss the playlist we share here. Tell us if you've experienced your dog being stressed, and we'll see you next time.
All right. And I think there's a couple too I'd even like to add on there that they didn't talk about. And one of them is like yawning in the context of them not just waking up from a nap. And then shake offs as if they're like shaking off from water. It's usually them trying to like shake off tension. So another one to look out for. All right, now let's see. This is the part where my presentation gives me trouble. Oops.
There are 10 very...
Here we go. All right. So now I have another exercise similar to the one that you did for yourself. This one we're going to do for our dogs. So now that we know what stress looks like in them from their body language and behaviors, I want you to reflect on the context that you usually see those behaviors or body language from your dog. And so, just like us, dogs can have a wide range of stressors, and they can show up like daily, weekly, or even just every so often. And some are going to be more obvious, like going to the vet, or if your dog really struggles being left home alone, usually you hear howling and things like that. But others are a little more subtle. For example, like being petted too roughly. There's actually a couple dogs in the video that were being petted and showing some signs of stress by yawning and lip licking. Or hearing a loud garbage truck outside. That's a common one. I see a lot of dogs show some signs of stress for, especially in San Diego. Or being asked to do something, if it feels confusing or hard, you might notice some of those lower level signs of stress. So take about 4 minutes, again, to just jot down the stressors your dog experiences regularly. Try to be as specific as possible. Instead of just saying walks, maybe it's like seeing dogs or joggers on walks, or leash pressure near busy roads. So get really specific of the context if you can remember. And then, just like you did for yourself, try ranking them from most stressful to least stressful. Don't worry about it being perfect. We're guessing. We can't read our dog's mind. So just use your intuition there. And this will help you start identifying patterns to give us a clear idea of where to focus support efforts first. So, again, yeah, we'll give you 4 minutes.
And again, I'll check in at 2 minutes. Okay. Two minutes left. All right, that's 4 minutes.
Thank you. All right. So some of you may have like tons of things on your list, while others, maybe it was hard to come up with some of these. And again, this isn't about like judgment. No one's going to know about this except you. And it's just about growing and curiosity and understanding. And the more we understand what's challenging for our dogs, the better equipped we are to help them feel safe and supported. And so, if we don't really have kind of like a starting point or a map of what's going on with our dogs, it's hard to actually help them. So, it sounds obvious, but having that clarity and again, the more specific you get of the context, the better. All right. And another common thing I see, and I hear this from clients all the time, is once they start to understand a dog's body language and like those stress signs that we just showed you, they start to feel anxious about every time they see their dog show these signs. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm always stressing my dog out. If I'm petting them, if I take them here, like they're constantly stressed. Does that mean I'm being a bad dog parent? And the answer is no. Life is inherently filled with stressors. And it's also important to remember that stress is normal and necessary to a degree. It's just we're looking at like, where does it turn into chronic or where does it feel overwhelming? And then we can get curious of those lower level signs of stress and see like, can we make any changes here? And I'll guide you through that. But stress, again, is just the body's natural way of adapting to change, challenge, or even excitement. It's not inherently bad. And so if you notice signs of stress or arousal, arousal again is that word that is used to really talk about like your dog's body getting ready for action. Don't panic, just get curious. So ask yourself questions like, what's happening around them? Is it like, oh, okay, kids are cornering them and petting them? Is it noisy cars that you're driving by? Or is this a new situation or part of a pattern? So sometimes you might see your dog act strange out of the blue, or you might start to notice, oh, yeah, like they really do struggle only when we walk by, I don't know, German Shepherds or something like that. You'll start to pay attention to these patterns that can give you clues. Some might be more predictable than others. So if you see any predictable triggers, that's really helpful to note in regards to your dog's stress. And then also taking note of what the intensity level of the situation was. So lower level signs of stress tend to be like maybe the shake off or a yawn or lip licking. It can escalate into being kind of a more intense level of stress if they're stiffening, growling, lunging, biting, or if they get stressed and they can like calm themselves down pretty quickly compared to if they get stressed and amp themselves up and up and up and up until somebody intervenes. So that's kind of like, yeah, the spectrum, if you will, of looking at the intensity level of the situation and also making note, like, were they panicking or were they just a little uncomfortable and worked through it? This will be helpful as you're learning your own discernment of like, when can you back off and let your dog handle things for themselves? And when do you need to step in and support them? And what do you avoid entirely? Because again, we can't avoid everything in life. And if we did, we wouldn't really be allowing anyone to grow. And I think some confidence comes from being challenged or a little uncomfortable and moving through it. But I think there's some nuance to that. And sometimes some people look at things like, oh, they're fine. And in reality, the dog's really struggling. So just be curious with it and try to just use really good, keen observation skills. And again, our goal is not to shield our dogs from all stress. It's developing this discernment to know, again, which situations they can handle and grow from, which they need support from, and which to avoid entirely. And that's how you build something called resilience, like how you bounce back after stress. And this might feel scary and overwhelming, but one of the best ways to learn this discernment is through trial and error and trusting your own discretion with that. So again, we don't want to be recklessly putting our dogs in situations to harm them, but like trusting your gut of like, I think they've got this sometimes, and other times being like, nope, your crazy bananas dog is not going to come greet mine. Thank you. So really get that trust muscle going, even in yourself. And sometimes things outside of our control happen. Sometimes we misjudge situations, and sometimes our dog behaves in unpredictable manners, or at least to us, it's unpredictable. And this doesn't mean that you were negligent, stupid, or that you're to blame. And like I said earlier, life is inherently filled with stressors and unpredictable variables. So all you can do is try your best and try to look at situations objectively and see what you can learn from with your mistakes. And I'll kind of add like a little asterisk. If you suspect or have witnessed your dog displaying signs of aggression, it's best to call in professional help to help prioritize safety and help you assess risk. And until you're able to do that, let's say like finances are a concern or time, this just make note of the situations that have ever occurred where your dog had an aggressive response and try to avoid those situations or putting them in those types of situations again until you can get professional help. All right. So now I want to go into like what our dogs really need. And this isn't just like food and walks and a cozy bed. Our dogs like feel like family and they're so in sync with us that it's easy to forget they're actually a different species. So yes, while dogs share some similar social structures with humans, it's probably why we've connected with them so deeply. But they also have dog specific needs that we might not fully understand or think about. And so these photos are some common examples of them. And some of them can look like naughty dog behavior, but in reality, it's just dog behavior. Dogs need to sniff, forage, lick, chew, shred, dig, run, play, and connect socially, either with us or with other dogs, or maybe both. And these aren't just fun little extras. These are essential outlets that help dogs regulate stress, engage their brains and bodies, and feel fulfilled. And different breed types and even different individuals will have different needs. So some dogs are more high energy and are built to run. Others live to chew. Some might really need to chase movement. One dog might ignore toys unless you're playing tug with them. And that they can even have preferences over which types of chews they like. So that's something I hear commonly is like, my dog doesn't like to chew. We have all these toys and he doesn't chew on them, but they might not light up from synthetic chews. They might want like a bone or something a little more natural to chew on. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like chewing if they just don't like what you're offering them. Some might want to greet, every dog in the neighborhood. They're like the party animals of dogs. And others prefer a small circle. They're like, you're mature, like let's have maybe a glass of wine by the fire pit kind of a dog. And then some enjoy no dogs at all. They're like, I'm a people kind of dog. And this is again where curiosity becomes such a powerful tool. And so if you offer your dog a variety of activities, start to pay attention to what lights them up. We can learn so much about who they are and what helps them feel regulated and content when we actually just pay attention to watching them, seeing what makes them be silly or what behaviors or things that they gravitate towards when they have the option to. And here's the thing that's easy to forget as well, is that most of our dogs are captive animals. It doesn't mean they aren't deeply loved. It just means that they can't meet their own needs without us giving them the opportunity. They can't choose when to dig, explore, or socialize. And if we're not creating those opportunities for them, they don't get them. So it's kind of like if you feel stir crazy, you could just go to the gym. If you're feeling socially deprived, you could call up a friend. If you're feeling bored, you throw on a TV show. Our dogs don't have that luxury, again, unless we give them those opportunities. And just like us, one of the most important needs that we often forget is the ability to feel safe. So it's to be actually safe and to feel safe. Those are two very different things. And some dogs, especially dogs with unknown histories or trauma histories, are always living in this like state of just hypervigilance. Their nervous systems are hardwired to protect them. So it's something to consider. Even if you know your dog is safe and they're terrified of everything, they're not in a place to learn like that. So really, it's how do we prioritize their perception of that safety? And I would say if this is a little more extreme, professional help would really be helpful. And also, if your dog, let's say they are safe and everything, but if they're living with untreated pain or chronic discomfort, it also is really hard for them to thrive, right? It's just like the scenario I gave of myself in the beginning of this presentation. When I was feeling inflamed and in so much pain, like it was hard to do anything, right? You're not thriving when you're like that. So thinking about that and just paying attention to any of these signs, or sometimes they're subtle signs of discomfort, even in your dog. And a dog who's constantly experiencing pain, sometimes they don't seem distressed. They hide it really, really well. Animals in general tend to hide that pain well because it will keep them alive. They won't be a target for other animals. But that stress is still there. It's still building up in the body. So again, be curious. This doesn't mean we need to like panic at everything, but just pay attention. And if we meet both the physical and emotional needs of our dogs, a lot of things start to shift. I've had some clients I've worked with where just meeting a dog's needs decreased the dog's reactivity like tenfold, where we didn't even have to go through a really rigid training plan because we met the dog's need that was causing that behavior. I've also had other cases where we figured out they needed more chews or more sleeps, and mouthiness or biting went down. So it's really interesting if you start to get curious and play around with these needs. A lot of these behavior issues can go down. And we also start to see resilience go up, which again is the body's like ability to bounce back from stress. And it also helps build your relationship. So that way it's a little bit more collaborative and you're not getting frustrated with them as much. You start to recognize, okay, my dog's communicating a need that hasn't been met. What could I do that's a part of their daily routine to help them meet that need a little bit better? And it's not all just about your dog. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to go into what you really need too, because this is a team effort here. And yeah, so instead of looking at like what you should need, I know on Instagram and a lot of content these days, it's always like, you have to do just meditation and this and that. And I love meditation personally, but that's not necessarily for everyone. So again, it's not what Instagram or wellness culture says you need, but what you actually need to feel grounded, safe, and okay, and in your body and in your life. And a lot of the advice we hear about managing stress, I think, is really oversimplified. It's like drink water, take a bubble bath, and those things can help. I think they're things for self-care. That's great, but they don't always get to the root of what your specific nervous system is asking for. And I want you to kind of stretch your brain and even think conceptually, like big picture. Maybe your stress could be coming from, being stretched too thin or feeling like you can't rest without guilt. Maybe it's from not feeling fully seen or heard in a way that makes you feel safe. Maybe your boundaries have been leaking for years and now your body is finally sounding the alarm. Sometimes what we need is a slower pace. Sometimes we need permission to do less. Sometimes we need boredom, especially in this day and age. We hardly are ever bored anymore. But when we just stop consuming and let our brains just sit in silence and the boredom, we can integrate and also like create a lot of creativity from that. Other times we need play. That's probably my favorite need. I think adults forget about this quite a lot, of just being like silly and doing things just because it's fun. Like there's so much I think that can come from that. Also about, movement. That's not about just burning calories or getting thinner. It's about being alive. And we might need to process grief or practice being still or having connection or walk out in nature. Again, this is going to look maybe a little bit different for everybody. And again, big picture, maybe we say no more often or yes to something we've been afraid to even try. So this isn't a checklist, it's an invitation. Feel free to even like screenshot this slide if you want to just think about on a deeper level or journal about later, but really get curious of getting to know yourself and listening to your body. Notice what fuels you and what drains you. And most importantly, remembering that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's the foundation for showing up for anyone, including your dog, your people, your family, your work, your world, in a more sustainable way. All right. And just like with our dogs, when our needs go unmet, it can shape our behavior, our stress levels, and how we show up in the world, including in our relationships. I feel like more often than not, if we're getting in a lot of conflict, there are some needs that are not being met. And similar again to my story in the beginning, I remember this when my needs were feeling unmet in the relationship I was in, it was causing conflict. And even that conflict was impacting our dog's need to feel safe. So it's this domino effect that is interesting to just get curious of. And when we recognize our own unmet needs, it can help us approach just communicating with our dogs or ourselves or our loved ones with more compassion and less frustration. So I invite you to pause and reflect on your own unmet needs. I think we all have unmet needs. I don't know anyone who's like, I feel amazing all the time. Like, really look into this and be honest. Are you craving more, like play or rest or spontaneity, but feel stuck having to be productive? Do you feel safe in your body or in your home, your current circumstances? Are your basic needs for nutrition and movement and, again, connection with nature, is that being met in a way that actually feels nourishing? Or are there any areas where you're constantly pushing through and what you really need is gentleness or permission to slow down? And start to think about what small shift you could take today or tomorrow to help you feel more regulated and be able to meet your own needs first. This doesn't have to be the biggest change, like I need to move and like break up with this person. It could be something small, like as small as I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock tonight so I wake up well rested, or I won't have coffee or caffeine after noon so it doesn't impact my sleep. Anything, the smallest things sometimes are the easiest to start with. So take a moment. This one will probably do maybe like 3 minutes or so, just to jot down any needs, again, of your own that feel unmet, and starting maybe first with the ones that feel the lightest to meet. Maybe circle those on your list. So not the huge, massive ones, but things that feel attainable to actually change within a day. And yeah, and if we could do the timer for 3 minutes, that would be perfect.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
We're halfway at 1.5 minutes left.
Thank you.
And that's time.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, there's no right or wrong answers really with any of these exercises. Just notice, what needs you're craving, what's coming to you, and what feel like the easiest ways to nurture that need. I'm a big fan of taking the path of least resistance and getting, again, small wins for both you and your dog. And the more we understand our internal world, the more capacity we have for everything else. So always just important to remember that. All right. And so now that we've reflected on your own needs, I want you to think about the behaviors your dog does that drive you absolutely nuts. You know the ones, the ones that make you sigh, get frustrated, or feel like you're constantly correcting them. And these also might be the behaviors that maybe you yell at them and then feel really bad about it after. So I want you to, again, think of those behaviors, then ask yourself, could any of these be actually stemming from unmet needs for your dog? Sometimes what feels problematic to us is actually just our dog trying to meet a need, but in a way that doesn't work for our lifestyle. So it's okay to feel frustrated. Doesn't mean that we won't do anything about it because your dog needs to do this behavior, but it does mean that we need to kind of problem solve in a way so you feel like your needs are met and your dog still has a way to have their needs met in a way that's not breaking your boundaries too. So, for example, maybe your dog is pulling like a freight train on walks. That need could be like they're just really understimulated. Maybe they're full of pent up energy. And then your need is not being met because you're feeling unsafe on the walk. They're hurting you. You're scared they're going to drag you down the street. Both of your needs are valid in that example. And there's workarounds potentially around that too. Or maybe they're super social and they're home alone most of the day. And the second you come home from work, they're bouncing off the walls, jumping on you, and barking, and it drives you crazy. So that could be a sign again, the dog's social needs have not been met during the day, and you're probably exhausted. So you're like, I just don't have much to give back right now. So that would be another example. Another common one I see is maybe your dog is barking and lunging at other dogs because they don't feel safe around them. Or maybe they love other dogs so much and don't have opportunities to engage with them. So they get really, really frustrated being connected to a leash. You don't have to know the exact root cause right now. And I could argue we might not ever really know because we can't read their minds. But this is your opportunity to start taking some educated guesses. What might your dog be trying to tell you with these behaviors? And just jot down a few ideas. Again, no judgment, no pressure to be right. Just start building awareness and curiosity of these misbehaviors that your dog is doing that could maybe be unmet needs in disguise. You could take maybe 2 minutes to do this exercise.
Okay, starting. We're halfway at 1 minute. All right, that's 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So, one of the most powerful ways to support your dog is by becoming their master scientist. I feel like the word master for your dog is a old outdated term I think that's been used in training, and I was like, here's an opportunity to reframe and really just look at how can we get really curious of them and their behavior. So we're not going to try to be someone who is dictating their every move and trying to control them, but rather someone who gently observes, experiments with care, and learns what works best to meet your dog's unique needs, and ideally in ways that also support your needs too. And just like scientists form hypotheses, they try small adjustments and reflect on the results to improve their approach, so can you with your dog. So, again, our goal isn't to eliminate your dog's behaviors entirely. Behavior is really personal, and actually, it's quite complicated to try to remove something entirely from the brain. It doesn't really work like that. Instead, it's important to notice whether unwanted behaviors decrease in intensity or frequency, especially if you try to meet your dog's needs and try something out and all of a sudden something decreased in intensity or frequency. That's a huge clue. Or if you try to offer proactive support, maybe in like a creative way. We'll go over some examples in a minute. But it's really, again, important to just be curious, to try to observe objectively. And these experiments, obviously do it kindly. Don't do like terrible experiments to your dog, but really look at things like, what would happen if I do X? Then do they do Y more or less? And then you can reflect and either do more of what's working really well or stop doing what's not working. And if anything's making anything worse, certainly stop that. So here are a few safe and supportive examples you might try. So what happens if you set up 2 doggy play dates a week for your social butterfly high energy dog? Do they become less destructive in the home? That's a potential experiment to run. What happens if you offer a licky mat or a stuffed Kong after a stressful outing? Does it help your dog settle faster compared to if you don't give them one of those items? Another experiment. For a dog who struggles with fear of missing out or FOMO, and maybe they get really mouthy when they're overtired, does the mouthiness decrease, increase, or stay the same if you prioritize taking them to a quiet space for a nap in the middle of a day or outing? And then the last example is going to be thinking about what distance you notice your dog go from relaxed to tense when they see a trigger. This is really big for like dog leash reactivity. So if you always try to keep that distance from triggers, does your dog not bark or lunge? And just getting curious, or tracking the distance or the context of what your dog's reacting at. So again, this kind of compassionate curiosity turns everyday challenges into opportunities for discovery. So instead of feeling like hopeless about this, I think it reframes your mindset, which again can help your body take it from a point of distress to eustress, which is the good stress, as you try to overcome these. And then when you find little things that work really well, it's really rewarding for us too. And it helps your dog decrease the stress. So it's a win-win when you figure it out. And over time, this helps you find relief faster than trying every DIY training approach you see on Instagram. So many things on social media could like contradict one another. It's like the wild, wild west out there. And trying to do all these like training regimens can sometimes just feel overwhelming. So I find instead choose one thing to just adjust and pay attention to, track, and that will give you more clues than most anything else. So stay curious, keep it kind, try small things, watch closely, and celebrate the little wins. That's where real change begins. And once you understand your dog's unique stress signals, their common triggers, and individual needs, you're in a really powerful position. Instead of reacting when things go sideways, you can anticipate tricky situations and set your dog up for success ahead of time. Think of this like emotional scaffolding. You're basically giving your dog structure while they build the skills to navigate life more calmly and confidently. Proactive support doesn't have to be complicated. It's about small, intentional choices that reduce pressure and increase safety. And it doesn't necessarily involve an extensive training plan, although it can, and sometimes that's helpful. Proactive support can be small adjustments to your daily routine that have a big impact. Things like keeping your dog on leash when guests arrive so they're not tempted to jump or bolt out the door. Using baby gates or crates to create calm zones during high energy moments, and giving them items to lick or chew in that space to self-soothe. Maybe it's skipping bringing your dog to a party or a festival or a bar if your dog is already on edge that day. Maybe you take more breaks before your dog hits a wall during play, walks, or training. Maybe you offer more daily calming activities like sniffy walks in nature, enrichment toys, or chews to help regulate their nervous system. These little adjustments don't mean you're coddling your dog, they mean you're paying attention. You're learning what they need to stay below their overwhelm threshold. So now it's your turn to get hands-on with what we've talked about so far. I want you to take a moment to look at your dog's list of known triggers, those things, places, or situations that tend to stress or overwhelm them. And then your goal is going to be to brainstorm possible workarounds or management strategies that might reduce the impact of one. If you finish one fast, maybe do 1 to 2 of those triggers and think back to the proactive support ideas we covered, like baby gates, building in breaks, or offering calming outlets. And a little bonus challenge is if you can spot a workaround that also helps you manage your own triggers or stress, that's like a double win. So some examples of that could be like if you and your dog get anxious when guests come over, maybe you set up a calm zone behind a baby gate for both you and your dog to like retreat to when you're feeling anxious. Or maybe if leash walks trigger your dog's excitement and then trigger your frustration, what if you added a short play or training session before the walk to burn off some of that energy and make the walk smoother for both of you? Or maybe if your dog struggles with noisy environments that spike your own stress too, could you schedule walks or outings at quieter times of the day? So take a few minutes. We'll do maybe like 2 or 3 minutes to jot down at least one trigger. If you can do 2, and possible workarounds that you want to try. And then when we have our Q&A later, I'd love for you to share what you came up with, because I think every idea is, exciting to hear.
We'll start with 2 minutes and then we can add on if you want.
Thank you.
We're halfway through at 1 minute. All right, that's 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on. All right, so regulation is contagious. Have you ever walked into a room where you could cut the tension with a knife, even if no one said a word? That's your nervous system doing its job. It's constantly scanning for cues of safety or danger, often below the level of conscious thought. And this is where the concept of co-regulation can come in. So, co-regulation is the process of regulating our emotions through connection with another being, So where self-regulation is us doing that just with ourselves, co-regulation is with another. It stems from the field of psychology and was primarily used in the study of how caregivers help children learn to manage stress, emotions, and uncertainty through shared presence, comfort, and like modeling of behaviors. And it's not about fixing or controlling someone else's emotions. If we try that, it honestly will never work. It's really about being with them through their emotions, and it's not about doing something to them. And co regulation goes both ways. Our dogs often help regulate us too without us even knowing it. Their presence, their rhythm, their need for simplicity, it can be grounding when we let it. And here's the catch though. So even though dogs and kids can co-regulate us sometimes, it's not their job to always absorb our big emotions. This is because they don't have full agency over their daily lives. They also don't have the same brain development or emotional regulation tools that we do. And as adults, we make most of the decisions in the household. So it's really our responsibility to lead, as opposed to being like, okay, well, they've got to help us all the time. And that doesn't mean we have to be perfect. It just means we commit to noticing our own internal state and commit to trying our best. Because when we regulate ourselves, we help regulate them. And when we're dysregulated, we can accidentally dysregulate them too. And it becomes this like negative spiral, affecting both individuals over and over and over again. So it's really important, again, just notice it and try your best. It makes all the difference. And co-regulation isn't always easy, especially when life is already wearing you down. I definitely can attest to that. If you come home exhausted and you're hoping for a break and just find out that your dog has shredded the couch cushions or is bouncing off the walls with energy you don't have the capacity to meet. These are the moments when co-regulation is hardest, when your own nervous system is maxed out and your dog's behavior feels like too much, when calm feels out of reach and snapping feels inevitable. But here's the truth. Integrating co-regulation doesn't mean you always get it right. It doesn't mean you're endlessly patient or perfectly calm. It means you're learning. You're learning to notice your own cues of stress, shutdown, or overload sooner. And from there, you make different choices, even small ones, one step at a time. Maybe that means taking a breath before reacting. Maybe it means stepping outside for a reset. Maybe it means just not yelling this time. That's growth. And co-regulation is about showing up as a safe presence, even when things feel chaotic, and guiding, not demanding, our dogs through stress, uncertainty, or overstimulation. It can also mean asking for help when you need it. I feel like that one is so underused. You can ask for help from dog sitters or friends or your partner or hiring a dog trainer. Truly, like, lean on resources when you're at your limit. It can make all the difference. All right. And then bringing it all together, because most of us don't need more pressure to do more for our dogs. We already have endless to-do lists. What we really need are simpler, more sustainable ways to weave this concept into daily life without adding more to our already full plates. It's not about getting everything perfect. It's about trying your best to integrate small shifts into things you're already doing. That might look like letting your dog sniff for the full 40-minute walk before work and soaking in your surroundings right alongside them. Maybe it's putting your phone away during walks and being fully present together, or taking a deep breath before reacting when your dog pushes your buttons. Maybe it's hiring a dog walker or leaning on a friend when you're stretched thin, or proactively finding some dog sitters when before you have a crisis hit, especially with sensitive dogs. Maybe it's giving a chew or stuffed Kong after a walk to help your dog rest. Maybe it's setting up your space like Doggy Disneyland before Zoom calls or before you step out to recharge yourself. Maybe you leave your dog at home so you can have a solo coffee date and just exhale and chill. Maybe you let yourself rest guilt-free with a book, a TV show, or anything that refills your tank. For me, it's committing to a nature walk once a week with my dog and being truly present for it. Smelling the plants, hearing the birds, and really just practicing mindfulness is what I enjoy doing to reset myself. And this isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what feels attainable for you and your dog, and taking action with presence, intention, and with compassion too. All right. And so now we've got like Q&As, or if anyone wants to share really any like takeaways, or if they wanted to share any of their things they wrote down in their exercises, this would be the time. And you're welcome to come off mute or put it in the chat. I was like, somebody's got to have something. Crickets.
I have a question, and it is kind of related to one of my lists. I my husband and I take our dog with us a lot of places, and one is to my sister's house, and she has a cat that pretty much stays tucked away. But our dog is very eager to chase or go after the cat, and she spends her entire time pulling like a sled dog. We take her outside, and she'll still we keep her on a leash the entire time. So they also have tortoises in the backyard. So we keep her on leash, but I didn't know if there was anything we could do to deter her from wanting to chase the cat.
That's I feel like a common one and a tough one, especially if it's like for an outing, like where you're like, okay, this isn't something we're dealing with every day. It's like this is maybe once a week or once a month or less than that type phenomenon, where it might just be easier to do like you have her on the leash. Maybe you give your dog a high value activity for them on leash. I don't know what that would be for your dog. You'd have to explore that, but maybe like a delicious like bone or licky type thing could buy you some time, but I'd imagine they'd still probably have that high prey drive, we call it, where they want to chase all the critters. It might be easier to leave your dog at home for that outing at that house specifically, as another workaround. Really would depend on the path of least resistance. So if your dog's comfortable being left alone, it might be more enjoyable for you to just be at your friends and not worry about it, and maybe for their pets too. Or just try having them on leash, maybe like take them for a nice run, or I don't know, they get to have some exercise before that outing, and then have some chews or things to work on while on leash could potentially help.
Oh, I appreciate that, because I know not only do high value treats work for a lot of things for her, because she's also very food driven, but it can work for people coming to visit and distractions of dog interactions as well.
Yeah, and every dog is a little bit different. So yeah, try a couple of things out and see what works and what feels easiest for you and your dog.
I've got one in the chat too.
Oh, perfect. I can read it. Is there a best way to deal with a really hypervigilant dog? He was a rescue from the streets of Mexico. I think he has a hard time relaxing on walks. I do let him sniff pretty much as he wants on walks. So I just need to like process that again and reread it. Is there a best way to deal with a really hypervigilant dog? So there's a lot of nuance to honestly any kind of advice. Without knowing your specific dog, it's tough to like give specific details of just do this, do that. I would say if he's feeling really hypervigilant and like came from the streets of Mexico, a lot of that's going to be from early genetics, early life experiences, just teaching his nervous system that everything is maybe a potential threat versus a potential opportunity. So I think it's stemming from the need of not feeling safe. And him having a hard time relaxing on walks. I think the sniffing is a really good idea of letting him just process his surroundings more, maybe letting him choose the walking route, see if that helps, or doing like patterns. Sometimes I'll do pattern walking of we go outside, then we come right back in. We go outside, we come right back in, just to make it like more boring and less of a thing. But generally, without going like in crazy detail, I don't know anything else. Maybe trying more sniff time, and maybe letting them kind of dictate the walking route for a little bit, or playing around with pattern walks could be a potential outlet. And then I see another one came up in the chat. My dog pants a lot on car rides, especially on the freeway. This started when he was 1 year old. He was fine as a puppy. We can't think of anything that triggered it. Any suggestions? So sometimes with cars, I feel like it could either be potentially them getting like motion sickness. I don't think we can fully rule that out. It's obvious if they throw up, but I know a lot of us can have some low level motion sickness without having that, without actually vomiting. So considering that as a potential cause, another could be maybe he made an association with somewhere scary and associated with the car. Maybe that was a vet visit. Maybe it was, who knows, or maybe a car spooked him. So I would guess it would either be it makes me feel sick, or he had some negative experience that he associates the car with. Yeah, would be my guess. So can't think of anything that triggered it. Again, those are my guesses. Suggestions could be potentially talking to your vet about maybe like motion sickness medication if you think it's that route, or maybe giving him a calming activity in the car when he's on the freeway. If he's too scared, he probably wouldn't engage in it. But if he's like low to moderately anxious, he might want to engage in like a chew or some kind of like a licky type toy. Could be something to try. Any other questions, ahas, takeaways? I'll give a couple more minutes in case anyone's nervous. Does anyone want to share maybe like workarounds that they came up with where they were like, oh, okay, this is tough on my dog and tough on me. Here's a potential strategy that we're going to become our own scientists for and test out.
I was just going to mention, I loved your example of maybe it's the same thing and the solution is the same, of that quiet, calm corner when guests come over. Curious to hear if
Yeah.
anyone came up with any other things similar to that.
That can be a good outlet for teenagers too, or kids that like, as long as the dog's safe with the kids, if they're feeling overwhelmed having guests over, it's like, oh, we could go like read a book or do a coloring book with the dog that's working on a chew, and it's like a 2-for-1.
I know for our dog, once again, the high value treats are a great distraction. And I think we've tried this to give family members high value treats to give her too. And it seems to be okay. It's not a case where she gets confused or anything, but it's the number one distraction for her.
She's like, I love my good food. Sometimes even like tossing the food too, instead of, I don't know if they were hand feeding, but sometimes them throwing it like underhand behind where the dog's naturally standing can be a fun way too, of like not putting on too much pressure of like, get closer to me, but I have fun, yummy treats if you interact with me.
Yes, we've done that. And it's good. It works.
Good. All right. Anyone else? I'll give like another minute before moving on to just how you can get more support if you need it, or extra resources.
There's one more in the chat.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Thank you. So my dog barks and gets excited when people come to the door. I'm thinking putting him on a leash when that happens. Would that make him feel safer? So we never know exactly, again, what is going to help our dogs feel any type of way. We're taking an educated guess. So you could try it. One potential outcome is maybe the leash is frustrating, but once people come in and he can sniff and they're just like away from the door, sometimes that works and they're like less crazy bananas, or if they maybe toss some treats on the ground. If he's feeling unsafe from guests coming in the house, you might want to try out more distance from the door. Maybe he's on leash, maybe he's in another room. Again, looking at the path of least resistance. So some dogs get really frustrated behind barriers. So if he's one of those, I wouldn't add more things that are frustrating. But if he can be behind one, then it's really nice to just get some space where it's like the dog's behind a baby gate, the guests come in, maybe they sit down first and everyone does their hugs, hello, and puts their coats down. And then the dog can come up and feel safe. Or maybe they work on one of those calming chews too in the same space that we were talking about. I use the suggestion of a high value calming chew for a lot. They're one of my favorite strategies of getting that arousal out of the dog's physical body to help them then make better choices in those contexts that they struggle with. Anybody else? And also feel free to open it up in like shelter scenarios too. I know sometimes that's like trickier, you have less resources, but if anything pops up, feel free to share. All right.
If people think of questions after today's presentation, should they contact me or you?
You can contact me. I'll send you my email, but I'm always happy to chat and connect. And I also have my Instagram on there, and actually, I'll just pull it up on the slide right now. So my website's www.coregulatedcanines.com, where you can learn more or book a free discovery call with me. And happy to answer any questions and talk about what it would look like to work together if that's something you were wanting to inquire about. And I offer private coaching, both virtually for clients who live anywhere or in person for San Diego. And then I offer free tips and daily support on Instagram. My handle is on there. And then I also just came out with a podcast that's on Apple and Spotify. So just type in the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. You should see my face and my dog on there. And it's full of some of these mindset shifts we talked about, some practical tools and stories about my work with dogs to try to spark some ideas and helping people problem solve with their dogs. I know, we can do a lot of training things, but sometimes it's like, how can we just do something that's easier than a whole training protocol? And any questions, you're welcome to email me. All right. Anything else? Or I was like, my next slide's just a thank you.
Sounds like we're good.
Awesome. Well, and thank you all for coming and sharing your questions and participating. It was lovely to meet you virtually and appreciate it.